like engineer by education and economist. I had a corporate career before coming into the blockchain space, programming control systems for power plants, and then ending up actually selling hydropower plants in Southeast Europe. And so the clients are governments, and most of those facilities are actually funded through kind of soft loans. World Bank, German international financing institutions, EBRD, they're funding such type of deals. And it gave me a really good, incredible insight into the industry, how the industry is working. It felt like very glocked, it felt like very monopolistic and very little progress. Energy markets traditionally actually were controlled by one company in each country. And then in the last 20, 30 years, generation of electricity, distribution of electricity, they have been unbundled in many different type of companies. But because this activity is of national interest, it's a heavily regulated market, and those entities usually create kind of the rules how everyone else interacts in the energy market. And by creating the rules, you at the same time also create entry barriers. The technologies are all there that we actually could have local energy markets so that communities could be actually completely detached from the main grid and actually supply themselves with electricity and balance the electricity and so forth. But it's very complicated to make such business models because there is a lot of regulation you need to comply with. And a lot of that makes sense, but a lot of that is also kind of only a barrier to further innovation, which doesn't make sense. So if it is your interest to make a market more resilient and more equitable, then you would strive for a market that is more decentralized, that is governed more decentralized. Because if you create systems that are simply have a decentralized fashion in the design of the system, it is by nature more sustainable and more resilient. Once I stumbled over Bitcoin in 2013, I read the white paper. That was an eye-opener, not because of financial speculation. It was more an eye-opener that there could be technologies out there which enable decentralization. And the first time I read the Ethereum white paper, that was like, for me, the epiphany. Okay, now if Ethereum is really about to happen, this will be a game changer in the energy market, because energy market is a big coordination game between producers, consumers, storage of electricity, and this coordination is important because if it's not being coordinated, we have a blackout. So there is a frequency between everything that needs to be stable. And so for me, it really felt like the Ethereum white paper was the solution. It was simply the ability to create rules that are enacted automatically, and it's unstoppable. And energy markets are heavily regulated, so there is regulation you have to comply with, and you have to apply for certain permits and so forth, and it takes time, But now you can actually do this all in real time. And energy markets are real-time. There needs to be real-time coordination. So this ability that you could embed regulation into something that is immediately enacted, that was the key. It's like an unstoppable computer, and you have a smart contract there that coordinates the interaction of a lot of people. That was the key. That was beginning of 2014. Gav came to Vienna. I invited Vitalik for dinner, and that was the first time we met. And as Gav, Vitalik, and the others were building Ethereum, I conducted a bunch of workshops. I built an interdisciplinary team, software, hardware, regulation, and I tried to conduct workshops where I would show how the energy market works to Gavin and his team, and try to come up with a solution how this new kind of unstoppable computer that was about to be launched a year later could disrupt the market. After Ethereum launched, we incorporated Grid Singularity with my co-founder Anna. Another partner, Rocky Mountain Institute, we then further founded the Energy Web Foundation, which is an energy consortium. And so we brought together the largest energy players in the world, from Australia to South America to Japan. Then in 2019 we launched the Energy Web Chain, And a bunch of those utilities, they started building on the chain. They started building applications around tracking of electricity, crowdfunding, solar power plants, and all kind of different applications. And eventually, now it's 2024, we have a few countries where this technology is actually deployed on country level through the regulator, which is unbelievable because to change regulation in such a short time and onboard a country on a specific technology, that is unbelievable. In crypto, we are like grandfathers or grannies, it's like in the crypto, not many people know us, but in the energy markets, we are still young and we're quite successful in the energy markets. And so my goal is that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we can bring this advantage of utilizing the technologies in the energy web chain and so forth to all the energy markets globally. A groundbreaking application is the application of an identity system. Everything that wants to interact with the energy market, batteries, electric vehicles, power plants, consumers, they have an identity. They need to have an identity. And to be able to interact with markets, they need to share the data, predictions, how much they're going to consume, produce, and so forth, and with who they're going to trade. And so this is now generally done in most countries with Excel files, exchanging Excel files. So on blockchain, Energy Web has built a solution with a few of its affiliates where now this can happen in real time in a decentralized fashion. An asset can register its identity without human intervention and can start participating in markets by sharing its data with the respective market operator. And now this is groundbreaking because it all happens in real time. Imagine you have a Tesla in your garage and it's not doing anything. And you could actually install a trading algorithm in the Tesla because electricity prices are very volatile. It could actually buy and sell electricity and do arbitrage and start earning money. And not only Tesla can do it, but actually any type of load you have in the house could do it. You don't want to sit in a house where the light is going on and off, but there is other loads that you wouldn't see if they really turning on and off. They could all do arbitrage in the energy markets or support the energy markets in terms of its stability. And with this innovation, not only any household, but any device becomes a utility. Any device can participate in energy markets, buy, sell, trade, store, and that unlocks completely new economics. In October 23, Energy Web won a slot for Polkadot parachain. It's quite a challenge to run your own chain. There is a lot of validators you need to keep the technology up to date, and that is not that shouldn't be the task of the Energy Web Foundation. The Energy Web Foundation and its affiliates, they should innovate on application layer and not on core protocol. To join a technology where there is a bunch of other teams that take care of the core protocol, that makes by far more sense. And then the other is composability. There is a lot of DeFi protocols in applications on other parachains. It saves us a lot of cost. So we don't have to maintain our own chain and so forth. It's a decentralized technology which is operated by its users, and there is nothing that can really compete with such a concept in terms of transparency, and there is simply no one extracting the system. Everyone contributes to it. It's everyone's system. I think one of the most interesting fields that is coming is like tokenization of real-world assets. Actually, Mastercoin was the first project to talk about it, tokenization of real-world assets. And now we are 10 years later, and the big banks are talking about it. So it took 10 years for the big banks to talk about it. You can basically tokenize, everything is an NFT. Every physical good is an NFT. And once you tokenize that stuff, pretty much all of that becomes a security. But so how do you deal with these small securities everywhere? It's like it won't make sense to trade this art piece security on NASDAQ. Like NFT. It's like So there needs to be a change in definition of security and utility, and for that this can really go to a mass adoption. I remember philosophical discussions in the early days, where would this technology lead to if blockchain is really kind of taking over the world. A few assumptions that have been taken like around 2017, were that it's generally going to become a multi-chain world. It's not going to be only Ethereum, it's going to be a lot of different chains. Some other assumptions were like, there's going to be an increased research on token economics, which is nothing else than monetary policy. And more and more people will become, try to utilize better tools for monetary policy. And that we definitely saw this field expand a lot. And with that, we assumed that there would be more and more chains that would start building up treasuries. And so there would be treasuries that would constantly fill each other, and there would probably be an interest to have decentralized governance to govern the treasuries. And now, fast forward 10 years, we have a few networks where we see the governance processes are advancing at rapid speed to manage money, to manage kind of common goods, to manage treasuries. The question was like, at one point in time, the treasuries will probably have the monetary power similar to international financing institutions. In the traditional world, there is international financing institutions, and they provide soft loans to countries, and they actually compete against each other in providing a soft loan to a country. They also often represent political interest from the country that is controlling the international financing institutions, And so they usually provide soft loans to a country for infrastructure projects, roads, bridges, power plants, privatization of specific sectors and so forth. And so usually that money is flagged for specific activities. And then there is, KPIs that are being tracked, how the money is being dispatched. In most cases, actually, this money doesn't even arrive. A majority of this money goes back to other countries, which usually either the builders or of those power plants or streets and so forth. So, but the country ends up being indebted. El Salvador, for example, is asked the IMF to extend a credit line over 1.1 billion, and IMF is not really, or doesn't necessarily do it, or there is conditions, mentioned by the IMF that El Salvador should not have so much of its reserve in Bitcoin. You can't just think, you take a loan from someone and it doesn't come with conditions. And so we actually did a role play 1.5 years ago with a few network founders and policymakers, mimicking a situation where network treasuries would negotiate a potential loan with those policymakers. It was very interesting to see that, network representatives or treasury representatives, they were interested to fund government activities on Web3 rails, identity systems, land registry, social security systems. Pretty much majority of the government activities can be automated through smart contracts and voting tools. And on the other side, a few of the policymakers, they were interested to deepen the know-how exchange with the network representatives. And so there was a lot of discussions around, could we actually, create joint universities, and we make it attractive for you to come into our countries. It's not unimaginable. It's not crazy to think that something like this could happen in the future. And the biggest question mark that was out there is who's negotiating, because on the one side you have policymakers that are representing countries, they have been voted in. On the other side, who's actually the treasury, who's representing the treasury. So you could simply, someone could apply, may I represent the DAO in such a negotiation, But still, I don't think it's realistic to do this from one specific DAO, from one specific network now, because our industry is still very fractured. If I look at the industry, there's there is something I would call there is ecosystem wars, We are now currently slowly entering into the bull market. Ethereum ETF was approved, Bitcoin ETF is approved, which is amazing, but everyone is fighting for their own survival, to have more users on their networks. And I don't necessarily see a lot representation of discussions around the Web3 vision. I think not at all. No discussion at all about the initial Web3 vision, What inspired most founders to join crypto in 2014, 15, 16, 17 was actually the Web3 vision, where we could hold our own money, we could be our own banks, we could own our own data, and interact economically freely around the globe, and create our new governments actually inside the Web3, and innovate on governance processes, innovate on so many fields. And there was e-gold or e-money in 1995 already, but it all didn't work because the CIA shut it down. And so it needed decentralized technologies to survive. I'd love to see the Web3 topic revive, and to be honest, we see the Web3 embodied in kind of the governance of Polkadot DAO. There is a decentralized governance. There is so many people involved into managing common goods. It still has its problems here and there, but that's fine. It's the way the governments in the physical world worked. It took quite a long time to come there, and so it will also take its time in the Web3 space. But that is actually the Web3 vision, how Polkadot works. And I think the beauty about these governance tools is you can copy them and apply them on any scale. You could apply them in a very small community, 20, 30, 40 people. It's only a matter of time that it will go there. So what needs to happen, or what could happen, is something like the United Nations moment after the Second World War, where all the networks that were fighting first against each other, then after the war is over, they create something like United Nations. Once the networks realize they are much stronger together, that could be an incredible moment, where you could combine treasuries, and all those treasuries together are probably somewhere between 35 to 50 billion. That is a very powerful idea, I think. One of the first things that was created in the United Nations was the creation of the human rights, which is the smallest common denominator between all countries. That is a thing we have to start in the Web3 space, in between all the networks, to agree upon the smallest common denominator between us, which is probably the rights similar like to human rights, but the rights in the digital realm, rights that would simply allow us our existence to create those networks and continue innovation. Something like a declaration of digital freedom, something like a Web3 charter. If that happens, and we could actually convince policymakers to acknowledge that, and actually the rights that need to exist, that this innovation that has happened can continue further. But at the same time, there also needs to be a section which is like responsibilities, that the ecosystems acknowledge what has been done by society so far, and how society is being governed right now, and that is kind of the connection point between the digital realm and the physical realm. At the end, the DAO is nothing else than a government. But the only difference is there is no presidents, there is no ministers. There is just service providers that is potentially a temporary minister. And if this temporary minister as a service provider that's supposed to build up a diplomatic relationship doesn't really work, then he's being replaced, by another service provider. And so you probably will end up with temporary diplomats, or I don't really know exactly how this will play out, because you want to have long relationships, but it's yet to be discovered. A very interesting problem to solve. This is how to connect the old diplomatic world to this new DAO-style governance. It's very difficult to comprehend. There is basically a country, there is a nation there, that doesn't have land, but has financial power. It's inevitable that it's going there because we see majority of the ecosystem members are digital nomads. And digital nomads, they just want to go to countries where they're being treated better. And so it's very easy to imagine that those are the same people that vote on the treasury. So if there is an opportunity to fund a government that is very friendly to crypto, where you can maintain your rights, you can hold your self-custody wallet, and you can do further innovation, and where you're being treated as a client, not as a slave, those people, the ecosystem members, are likely to vote to provide a loan to this country. Every new generation is becoming more and more nomadic, you know. There is basically an alternative where somebody can exit kind of the reality by becoming nomadic, digital nomad, and enter the new reality. If nation state want to still stay relevant, it will be of big importance for them to innovate, you know. All the future generations, they have an alternative now. And they will use this alternative because they have more freedom. The country which understands this opportunity and creates those economic zones that these new digital nomads can come to its country and flourish and continue innovation, those countries will have a higher probability of being more successful economically than countries that prohibit it. It's very likely that small nation states will choose to go into this direction to attract this human capital, this innovators into their countries, than obviously large countries, you know. And simply because they have much more to gain, you know. You don't even need to look to El Salvador. Let's look at Europe, you know. Germany did something which basically killed the industry in Germany. There was a dialogue between the Ministry of Finance in 2021 with a bunch of network founders, and the network founders recommended to the Ministry of Finance how they should tax crypto activities. And the best way to tax crypto activities was to tax realized gain with capital gain tax, similar like Austria does it and other countries do it. Now the German government decided not to do that and to apply something that we call dry tax, which is a tax on unrealized gains as your staking reward is coming in crypto tokens, not as you realize the gain. Now what happened is this pretty much creates an incredible threat to the whole crypto industry because we have seen contractions of 90%. So if you collect your staking rewards and there is a contraction of 90%, it can be that you owe more in taxes than you actually have. So this type of taxation forces crypto founders to sell their crypto on a daily basis, you know. And we said, like, look, it's very simple, you know. If you install this taxation, then there is a lot of founders that will leave the country. And that's exactly what happened. If there is rules being created that our freedom is being cut, you know, then we just go somewhere where we can have the freedom. And so if you look at the real estate prices actually now in Berlin, they went actually down in a 2-digit number. If you look at the real estate numbers in Lisbon, in Portugal, where everyone went, they went up by these numbers. What I really like a lot about the open governance in Polkadot is the absence of populism, you know, which is very polarizing and creating kind of reactions in society that are not necessarily senseful. If you and so I believe that the future of society is more like the open governance process, where everything is authenticated, everything is being tracked, and everyone through their own decisions or through their activities is actually credible and responsible for what they do, you know, because it very much feels like that in current governance systems, nobody is responsible for anything, you know. Most promises are being broken that they have promised before. They have the 4 years, but now in open governance, There is no 4 years time you are in power now, you know. So it's not just about it's not about power at all. It's just about economic sensefulness, you know. Now we have a choice because then there is no barrier to enter into a digital realm. I mean, you need to have a computer. So far, they haven't forbid to go online. So and that is the freedom we need to fight for. You know, that you can go online, you can have a self-custody wallet, you can own your data, you can use cryptographic tools. This is the freedoms that are necessary. I mean, we will experience something really incredible in the next few years as we see kind of AI to unfold into next levels, you know. And I believe the more and more we experiment with open governance and all these processes are being tracked on chain, this will allow to something bigger evolve. As AI comes, there was this funny statement of one journalist asking Elon Musk, what do you think who will be president in 2035? And he said, what do you mean? You mean which AI will be president in 2035? You know, it's like, so there probably might evolve something like this where you have a state secretary, which is an AI trying to support the management of the open gov and kind of activate it, you know? It's like basically a decentralized version or AI version of Raoul, you know? So to motivate dialogue and so forth to make the governance more efficient, you know, and which could lead to something like a meta consciousness of humanity, you know, which is like nobody can explain it yet what it means, a meta consciousness of humanity. But for this, you need like at first you need like a substrate where you can actually see what is humanity thinking and doing, and that's exactly the substrate that the open gov is doing. So all the decisions are being made there, all the discussions that led to decisions, that is kind of creating kind of like a brain. Once you unleash AI on top of it, you know, this will be, I think, something really powerful can happen on it. Just project a few years into the future, like in 5 to 10 years, this will be by far the most efficient way to manage commons in the world.